May naririnig ba kayang echo? Hello? Alright. Mm, Good. Well, the Code of Ethics serves as a guideline for professional behavior and decision making for environmental planners. So it emphasizes the responsibility of planners to uphold integrity, fairness, and accountability in our work, okay, as environmental planners, especially when dealing with issues that impact the environment and communities. So ethical behavior is paramount in environmental planning, where decisions can have long-lasting impacts on ecosystems and human settlements. So adherence to this code ensures that planners maintain public trust and uphold the dignity of the profession. So, um, probably we can we go to the okay, just a moment. So that's section 9G. Okay, so we have section 9G and M of Article 2 of R8 and 587. Okay, um that's the law. Okay, section 9G of the law of R8 and 587 outlines the responsibilities of environmental planners in its practice. It mandates that environmental planners must conduct themselves in accordance with the code of ethics that ensure their professional activities are aligned with the principles of sustainable development, also equitable distribution of resources, and public welfare. So we have we just need to keep going, and so that you will remember 9G and M, because this section also yeah, the scope of ethical conduct as defined by section 9G includes honesty, integrity, and fairness in all dealings. So this covers interactions with clients, with the government, private sector, and the public. So environmental planners must avoid conflicts of interest and ensure transparency in their decision-making processes. For example, if a planner is hired by a developer to conduct an environmental impact assessment, or what we normally call for short EIA. So we must ensure, or they must ensure, that their findings are impartial and not influenced by the interests of the developer. Also in 9M, Okay, let me check that. It's on 9M. Yeah, just stay there, Jen. That 9M highlights the importance of continuing education, okay, and professional development for environmental planners. So, um, I think can we go to the next slide? Let me see if that's the 9M. Yeah, go back there. Okay, anyway. Um, because that's our commitment, environmental planners has a commitment to lifelong learning. So we have that section, specifically section 9M highlights the importance of continuing education and professional development for environmental planners. And it ensures that planners stay updated on the latest trends, technologies, laws, and best practices in the field of environmental planning. So ethical practice is not static. It evolves with new challenges and advancement in the profession. Uh, as a CPD, ethics as a CPD component, yeah, it often includes, the ethics and professional responsibility so that planners not only maintain their technical skills, but also refresh their understanding of ethical standards. For instance, environmental planner who continues to engage in CPD activities is better equipped to handle emerging issues like climate change, which may present new ethical dilemmas in planning and decision making. So, yeah, maybe we can proceed to the next one. Uh, so that's the Declaration of Principles, right? Article 1, Section 1. And so the document is formally known as the Code of Ethics for environmental planners. Because we have an old Code of Ethics. Yeah, I think you also need to have a copy of that. But this one, the title in itself, it signifies its role as the authoritative source of ethical standards for professional in the field. So the primary purpose of this code is to establish ethical standards that guide our professional conduct, so that again, I'd like to reiterate that it's intended to ensure that planners operate with integrity, professionalism, and a commitment to public welfare. So the code helps safeguard the credibility of the profession and promotes trust between planners and the public. So earlier I mentioned about honesty, fairness, accountability. Um, so for example, a planner facing pressure from a developer, because that's the example I had earlier. So the planner must choose between succumbing to the developer's demands or adhering to ethical standards that prioritize a thorough environmental assessment and public engagement. So, according to the Code of Ethics, the planner's primary responsibility is to the public and the environment, not just to the client. Although we have set of also criteria and principles how we demonstrate our which responsibilities do we have to the client. So in this particular context, the planner should explain the importance of conducting proper assessments and consultations to the developer, emphasizing that these processes are necessary for sustainable development and public trust. So by standing firm on these principles, the planner upholds the integrity of the profession and ensures that the project does not cause harm to the environment or the community. So another scenario is, so that before we leave um this slide, there's, for example, a city government commissions an environmental planner to create a redevelopment plan for a blighted urban area, or what we call the revitalization project. Okay, so the plan involves, for example, one of those activities could be relocating informal settlers, if there are any, so to make way for new infrastructure. So the planner must balance the need for urban redevelopment with the rights and welfare of the informal settlers who will be displaced. So how do we apply the code? The the planner, guided by the ethical standards in the Code of Ethics, should prioritize a just and equitable approach. So this could involve conducting thorough consultations with the affected communities. Also, you can propose alternative relocation sites if practicable, and ensuring that the redevelopment plan includes provisions for social housing. So by doing so, the planner ensures that the project benefits all stakeholders, particularly the most vulnerable, and adheres to the principles of fairness and social justice. Um, Another scenario, okay, that would indeed focus, or we need to pay attention to, is on the integrity, okay, in environmental impact reporting. So an environmental planner is tasked with preparing and environmental impact report, the EIR, for a new industrial facility. So the planner uncovers potential environmental hazards that could impact the local water supply. So the ethical dilemma there is that the company is sponsoring the EIR suggests downplaying the hazards to avoid project delays and additional costs. So how do we apply the code? Okay, so the Code of Ethics mandates that planners act with integrity and prioritize public welfare. So the planner should accurately report the findings, regardless of the potential consequences for the project timeline or budgets. By doing so, the planner not only fulfills their ethical duty, but also protects the community from the potential harm, reinforcing the credibility of the profession. So, in each of those scenarios I mentioned about scenario one, two, three, so the Code of Ethics for environmental planners serves as a critical guide for making decisions that align with professional and moral responsibilities. We go to section two. Okay, is it section two? Okay. So, this section highlights the responsibility of the, okay, profession to protect and promote the public interest by ensuring that only competent professionals are admitted to the practice of environmental planning. The underlying principle is that competent professionals are better equipped to make decisions that prioritize public welfare, sustainability, and responsible development. So, so what are those key points there? Promoting public interest. That profession of environmental planning has a direct impact on communities, public spaces, and the environment. So ensuring that practitioners are well qualified protects the public from poorly informed or unethical decisions that could have long-lasting negative consequences. So another key item there, focus is okay, just a moment. Just a moment. Then okay. Parang may insect, sorry. Just a moment. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, may insect sa sa laptop. So, okay. Another one is protecting public interest. The first one, promoting public interest, and then protecting public interest. So, okay. By admitting only those who have um demonstrated the required competencies, okay, through education, training, and licensure, the profession safeguards the quality of planning processes and outcomes. So this ensure that the work done by environmental planners is beneficial, equitable, and sustainable for all members of society. So what do we yeah, we need to have a scenario application here. For example, admission of new environmental planners. So when you pass, so okay, one context is that a young graduate from an environmental planning program or a new passer is eager to enter the profession. So, however, not yet a passer, but a young graduate, okay? So, however, they lack practical experience and a deep understanding of the complexities involved in environmental assessments and public consultation. So, what's the ethical consideration there? Well, the admission of this individual into the profession could compromise public welfare if they're not yet fully prepared to handle the responsibilities of environmental planning. So, when applying the code, the profession must ensure that the individual gains the necessary experience and education before being allowed to practice independently. So, this can be achieved through mentorship, additional training, or internships. By doing so, the profession protects the public interest by ensuring that only competent professionals are admitted. Another scenario where we can address unethical practices is that when a licensed environmental planner is found to be neglecting their duties by bypassing critical environmental assessments to fast track pub project approvals or potentially leading to harmful impacts on local communities and ecosystems. So the profession must decide how to address this misconduct to protect the public interest. And so, in this case, the Code of Ethics requires that the planner be held accountable for their actions. This could involve revoking their license, mandating corrective actions, or requiring them to undergo further education. By enforcing these standards, the profession protects the public from unethical practices and maintains the integrity of environmental planning. um Another scenario is that when so we need to uphold standards in large scale development. So a government agency, for example, is planning a large scale infrastructure like those we have involving reclamation projects. So it's a large scale, okay, infrastructure project that will affect several communities. The lead environmental planner in the project has a track record of ethical and competent work, but faces pressure from political leaders to overlook certain environmental concerns. The planner must balance the demands of political leaders versus their duty to protect the public interest. So the planner must adhere to the principles of the profession and advocate for a comprehensive environmental assessment and public consultation process, even if it means challenging political pressures. Easier said than done. So, but this action is aligned with the profession's role in protecting the public interest by ensuring that the project is developed responsibly and sustainably. So, the role of environmental planners in promoting and protecting public interest is central to the profession's ethical standards. We can go to section 3. I think it's article 1, still section 3. So, mm, okay, section 3, article 1. Um, this section emphasizes the ethical duty of environmental planners to serve God, country, and humankind. It reflects the idea that the profession is not just a career, but a vocation dedicated to improving society and protecting the environment for current and future generations. Serving God, country, and humankind is the principle that highlights the planner's responsibility to contribute to the greater good by integrating moral and ethical considerations into the planner's work. So this can be seen as a holistic approach where spiritual, national, and humanistic values guide professional actions. Also, as a commitment to service, we need to advance environmental planning in line with rights to a balanced ecology. So this commitment means that planners must ensure that their work contributes to the protection of natural resources and promotes sustainable development. It recognizes that all individuals have the right to a balanced and healthy environment as enshrined in the Philippine Constitution. So and that planners must uphold this right in their practice. So again, we need some scenarios to understand better and so we can embrace our code of ethics. For example, for a scenario one is on environmental stewardship in urban development. So I would like to contextualize or I'd like to put some context there that, for example, an environmental planner is tasked with designing a new urban development in a rapidly growing city. So the area identified for development is home to significant natural resources, including a river, for example, that provides water to nearby communities. So the planner must balance the need for urban expansion with the protection of the natural environment and the rights of the community to a clean and balanced ecology. So, guided by the commitment to serve God, country, and humankind, the planner should design the development in a way that minimizes environmental impact. This might involve incorporating green spaces, implementing water conservation measures, and ensuring that the development does not negatively affect the river. By doing so, the planner advances environmental planning in line with the community's rights to a balanced ecology. Another one is on community engagement for environmental advocacy, whereby a local government plans to build a waste management facility near a small rural community. So the community has concerns about potential environmental and health impacts. So the environmental planner must decide how to address the community's concerns while also ensuring that the project proceeds to meet broader waste management needs. So reflecting a commitment to serving humankind and protecting ecological balance, the planner should facilitate a transparent and inclusive consultation process. So this could involve educating the community on the facility's design, addressing their concerns with scientific evidence, and exploring alternative locations or mitigation measures. So by actively involving the community and considering their rights to a balanced environment, the planner serves both the public interest and environmental sustainability. Another scenario could be on, when we want to advocate for policy change. So an environmental planner is aware of outdated local policies that allow for deforestation in certain areas, which conflicts with modern understandings of environmental sustainability and the community's right to a balanced ecology. So the planner must decide whether to challenge the status quo by advancing or by advocating for policy changes that prioritize environmental protection over short-term economic gains. So how do we apply the code? Well, in alignment with a commitment to serve God, country, and humankind, the planner should advocate for policy changes that protect forests and promote sustainable land use. This advocacy can involve presenting data, working with stakeholders, and lobbying for legislation that ensures a balance between development and environmental preservation. And by doing so, the planner fulfills um, his or her duty to advance environmental planning in a manner that respects the rights of all to a balanced ecology. So our commitment to service outlined in the Declaration of Principles for Environmental Planners underscores the importance of integrating ethical, spiritual, national, and humanistic values into professional practice. So we can go to Article 1, Section 4 on professionalism and integrity. Um, this section emphasizes the importance of maintaining the highest standards of professionalism and integrity in the practice of environmental planning. It calls on planners to commit to excellence, competence, and ethical conduct in all aspects of their work. So, environmental planners are expected to uphold professionalism in their interactions, decision making, and overall approach to their work. So, this includes being punctual, being reliable, and respectful in all professional engagements. So, in our pursuit of excellence, planners are encouraged to continually strive for excellence in their work by staying informed about the latest developments in the field, seeking out opportunities for professional growth, and ensuring that their work meets the highest quality standards. So also, the principle of competence requires planners to ensure that they have the necessary skills and knowledge to carry out their duties effectively. This may involve pursuing additional education, training, or certifications to stay up to date with industry standards and best practices. So integrity involves being honest, ethical, and transparent in all professional activities. Planners also must avoid conflicts of interest, disclose any potential biases, and make decisions that are in the best interest of the public and the environment. So that's another element under Article 1, Section 4. So commitment to professionalism, pursuit of excellence, competence, and integrity. Uh, so how do we uphold professional standards in a complex project? An environmental planner is overseeing the development of a new commercial district, for example, and the project involves multiple stakeholders, including government agencies, private developers, and community groups. So the planner faces pressure from the developer to cut corners on environmental assessments to meet tight deadlines and budgets. So the planner but when we let the code of ethics stay in the middle, or that's something that will guide our practice, the planner must uphold the highest standards of professionalism and integrity by refusing to compromise on essential assessments. Like this may involve negotiating for more time or resources to ensure that the project meets environmental standards and protects public welfare. So, by doing so, the planner demonstrates commitment to excellence and ethical conduct even in the face of external pressures. Um, well, when how about competence in new areas of practice? A planner is assigned, for example, to work on a project involving coastal zone management, which is a field um that it's a field in which they have limited experience. So the planner must decide whether to proceed with the project despite their limited knowledge or seek additional training and support. So how do we apply the code to uphold the principle of competence? The planner should pursue additional education or collaborate with experts in coastal zone management. By ensuring they have the necessary knowledge and skills, the planner can deliver high quality work that meets professional standards. So this action aligns with the commitment of professionalism and excellence. And of course, we need to maintain integrity in client relations. If an environmental planner is offered a substantial gift or bonus by a client in exchange for approving a project that doesn't fully comply with environmental regulations, the planner must choose between accepting that incentive and compromising their integrity or refusing the offer and upholding ethical standards. So the planner must prioritize integrity by refusing the bonus or the incentive and ensuring that the project complies with all regulations. This decision protects the planner's professional reputation and the public's trust in the environmental planning profession. So we go to the next, which is section 5, adherence to laws. This section emphasizes yeah, let me just take some water. This section emphasizes the fundamental responsibility of environmental planners to uphold and obey the Constitution, laws, rules, regulations, and legal orders. So, environmental planners operate within a legal framework that governs their actions and decisions. Compliance with these laws ensures that their the planner's work is legitimate, transparent, and accountable. So how do we uphold the Constitution? In this case, planners must ensure that their actions align with the principles and provisions of Philippine Constitution. This includes protecting the rights of citizens, promoting social justice, and ensuring sustainable development. Environmental planning is governed by various laws and regulations such as Environmental Impact Assessment Law, the EIA, the Clean Air Act, Water Code, zoning ordinances. So planners must be familiar with these laws and ensure that their projects comply with all relevant legal requirements. When legal orders are issued by courts on government agencies, planners must follow them. This includes adhering to cease and desist orders, implementing court rulings, and cooperating with government investigations. So, ensuring legal compliance in project development could be demonstrated when an environmental planning is working on large-scale infra project that requires several environmental permits and compliance with local zoning laws. The project's timeline is tight, and there's pressure to start construction before all permits are secured and zoning issues are fully resolved. So the planner must prioritize adherence to laws by ensuring that all necessary permits are obtained and that the project complies with zoning regulations before construction begins. This might involve pushing back on the project's timeline to avoid legal repercussions and ensure that development is lawful and ethical. So upholding the law in this scenario protects the planner's credibility and the project's legitimacy. How do we respond to environmental violation? For example, during a routine inspection, an environmental planner discovers that a developer is illegally dumping waste in a protected area, violating environmental laws. So the developer asks the planner to overlook the violation in exchange for financial compensation. Who knows if this is happening? Indeed. So the planner must report the violation to the appropriate authorities and refuse any bribes. Adherence to the law requires that the planner enforce environmental regulations and hold violators accountable. This action not only upholds legal standards, but also protects the environment and public health. How about those conflicting legal orders, which could be one of the scenarios under this. For example, a planner is involved in a project where a local government unit has issued a legal order to halt construction due to concerns over environmental impact. But the developer has obtained a separate court order allowing construction to proceed. The planner must decide how to navigate these conflicting orders while maintaining compliance with the law. The planner should seek legal counsel to understand the hierarchy of orders and ensure compliance with the prevailing legal authority. Or better yet, the planner at the same time if he's also a lawyer. So this may involve pausing the project until the legal conflict is resolved or advocating for mediation between the parties. By carefully navigating the legal landscape, the planner upholds their duty to adhere to laws and ensure that the project does not violate any legal provisions. So adherence to laws is a non-negotiable principle in the practice of environmental planner. By upholding the Constitution, laws, regulations, and legal orders, planners ensure that their work is lawful, ethical, and in the public interest. We go to the Section 6 of Article 2, continuous improvement. So, continuous improvement here, this section emphasizes the responsibility of environmental planners to actively contribute to the development and enhancement of the profession. So continuous improvement involves both individual growth through ongoing education and skill development and collective growth by sharing knowledge and best practices with peers. So the field of environmental planning is dynamic with new technologies, regulations, and challenges emerging regularly. So planners must stay informed about these changes by participating in professional development activities such as workshops, seminars, certifications, and courses. So keeping knowledge up to date ensures that planners remain competent and effective in their roles. So do we contribute to the profession? Beyond personal development, planners should also contribute to the profession by mentoring others, publishing research, presenting at conferences, or engaging in discussions that advance the field. By doing so, they help raise the overall standard of the profession and support the growth of their peers. So, how do we embrace new technologies? So it's a scenario that I'm up to. So an environmental planner notices the new digital tools for environmental impact assessments are being adopted in the industry, but they're not familiar with these technologies. So the planner decides to enroll in a course that teaches the use of these tools, ensuring that they incorporate them into their work. But by updating their skills, the planner stays competitive and can offer more advanced services to clients and communities. So how do we share knowledge through mentorship? An experienced environmental planner is approached, for example, by a recent graduate seeking advice on how to, face or how to navigate some complexities of environmental regulation. So the planner agrees to mentor the graduate, sharing insights, resources, and best practices. So that's commitment to the profession. So this mentorship not only helps the graduate develop, but also strengthens the profession by fostering the next generation of planners. Another scenario is how could planners contribute to professional discussions, like what we do here, and some yeah, for example, those planners who have significant experience in climate change adaptations, especially when he's being invited to speak in national conferences. Okay, so uh by presenting at the conference, the planner contributes to the collective knowledge of the profession. They share practical strategies and case studies that others can learn from, thereby promoting the continuous improvement of environmental planning practices across the industry. Can we go to Article 2, Section 7, which is active participation? This section emphasizes the importance of environmental planners engaging in activities organized by professional organizations like what we have Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners. So by participating in these activities, planners can promote the relevance of the profession, address key concerns, and contribute to the development of standards and policies that impact this field. Active participation here allows planners to voice concerns about emerging issues, whether they relate to policy changes or industry practices or environmental challenges. So this involvement ensures that the profession remains responsive to the needs of society and the environment. And how do we enhance relevance? Our relevance. Participation in professional organizations helps keep the profession relevant, okay, by fostering discussions on innovations, best practices, and ethical considerations. It also strengthens the collective voice of environmental planners in policy advocacy, public awareness, and industry standards, among others. We can influence policy through professional organizations. Or we can network and knowledge. We can engage in networking and knowledge sharing at conferences, as I mentioned earlier, and we can mentor professional, and we can mentor, guide new graduate through the complexities of the profession. So this mentorship helps strengthen the profession by ensuring that new planners are well prepared and aligned with the values and standards of the field. So we can go to Section 8 of Article 2, Integrity and Transparency. This section underscores the importance of upholding the highest standards of integrity and transparency in all professional activities. Environmental planners are expected to be honest, clear, and open in their dealings with clients, colleagues, and the public. This principle is essential for maintaining trust and credibility within the profession. Regarding Okay, accurate disclosure of qualifications and experience, planners must be truthful about their qualifications, certifications, and professional experience. Misrepresenting one's capabilities can lead to legal and ethical violations, as well as damage to the planner's reputation. We also need to refrain from misleading publicity. When promoting our services, environmental planners must avoid exaggerated claims of or false advertising. Transparency in communication ensures that clients and the public are not misled about what the planner can deliver. Planners are also encouraged to share their knowledge and expertise by serving as resource persons in their communities or within their organizations. So additionally, they should actively pursue opportunities for professional development to stay informed and competent in their field. So there should be transparency in project bidding, for example, how we apply this in some scenarios. So, for example, an environmental planner is competing for a project and is required to submit their qualifications and previous work experience as part of the bidding process. So the planner ensures that all information provided is accurate and verifiable. This includes listing only projects they have actually worked on and being honest about their role in those projects. So by maintaining transparency, the planner fosters trust with the client and upholds the integrity of the bidding process. So we also need to avoid misleading advertising. For example, when a planner is launching a marketing campaign to attract new clients, the planner considers highlighting successful projects and certifications to bolster their appeal. So how do we put out our commitment to transparency? The planner avoids making exaggerated claims or using ambiguous language that could mislead potential clients. For instance, if a project was a team effort, the planner clearly states their specific contribution rather than implying sole responsibility. This honesty ensures that clients have a clear understanding of what the planner can deliver. So, Us becoming resource persons, well, a community group is, for example, uh, you already agreed to serve as resource person, offering insights and practical advice based on your expertise. So by sharing knowledge, the planner contributes to the community's development and enhances the profession's reputation as a valuable public resource. So integrity and transparency are cornerstones of ethical practice in environmental planning. We go to the next one, which is Article 3, Section 9, are healthy relationships with colleagues. This is very important. I think this is something that we need to improve based on my experience. So healthy relationship with colleagues, this section emphasizes the importance of fostering respectful and supportive relationships with other professionals. Building strong professional relationships is essential for creating a collaborative environment where knowledge and expertise can be shared, leading to the overall growth and advancement of the profession. So we need to respect the professional image of colleagues. It is crucial to recognize and respect the contributions, skills, and reputation of your colleagues. This includes avoiding actions or statements that might undermine their professional standing and instead supporting and acknowledging their achievements. We need also to, it's also important to share research and studies. So collaboration and knowledge sharing are vital for the progress of the environmental planning profession. By sharing research, studies, and findings, planners can collectively enhance their work, learn from each other, and innovate more effectively. So we need also to broaden opportunities for professional development. We need to encourage and facilitate opportunities for colleagues to grow professionally, um, which is part of maintaining a healthy relationship. This can involve mentoring, recommending courses or conferences, and creating spaces for professional discussions and learning. So we need to respect colleagues' reputation. For example, during a public meeting, an environmental planner is asked to critique a plan developed by a colleague. The planner disagrees with several aspects of the plan, but recognizes the effort and thought that went into it. The planner provides constructive feedback, focusing on specific elements of the plan that could be improved without disparaging the colleague. By maintaining a respectful tone and acknowledging the colleague's work, the planner upholds the principle of respecting the professional image of colleagues. Another scenario is when you want to share research for mutual benefit. A planner has recently completed a study, for example, on sustainable urban drainage systems or uh, drain, drainage master planning effort, which could be beneficial to other planners working on similar projects. Instead of keeping the study to themselves, the planner shares the findings with colleagues through a professional network or a workshop. This knowledge sharing not only helps others, but also strengthens the planner's professional relationships and contributes to the profession's collective experience. We also need to encourage professional growth. The more experienced planner recommends yeah, relevant courses, invites new planner to join them at an at uh, at an upcoming conference and offers to mentor them through their first assessment. By broadening opportunities for professional development, the experienced planner helps the colleague grow and fosters a supportive work environment. So, Article 4, Section 10 on professionalism and integrity in client relationships. So, this section outlines the essential responsibilities of environmental planners towards their clients, emphasizing honesty, fairness, and ethical conduct. Building and maintaining trust with clients is key to successful professional relationships. And adhering to these principles ensures that planners fulfill their duties while upholding the integrity of the profession. So planners must be truthful because we need to exercise honesty in presenting our credentials. Planners must be truthful about their qualifications, experience, and capabilities. Misrepresenting one's credentials can lead to legal issues, loss of trust, and damage the profession's reputation. Also, we provide services within the scope of practice. So environmental planners should only offer services that fall within their expertise. Attempting to perform tasks beyond their competency can result in substandard work, legal liabilities, and harm to the client. Avoid conflict of interest. What do we mean by this? Planners must ensure that their decisions and recommendations are not influenced by personal gain. Transparency about any potential conflicts and taking steps to mitigate them is crucial to maintaining ethical client relationships. We must also charge fair fees. Fair and transparent pricing is essential for building trust with clients. Overcharging or undercharging can raise ethical concerns and damage professional relationships. Okay, we need to maintain confidentiality at all times. Client information must be handled with care. Planners should protect sensitive information and avoid disclosing it without the client's consent unless legally required to do so. So, honesty in credentials, providing services within scope, avoiding conflict of interest. These are all, some of those scenarios that we can put out to make sure that we have complied with Article 4, Section 10, which is which deals with professionalism and integrity in client relationships. So Article 6, Section 11. Next slide. Safeguarding national interest. Okay. This section emphasizes the duty of environmental planners to prioritize the well-being of the nation and its people and their work. Planners must ensure that their decisions and projects contribute positively to the country's long-term sustainability. Planners must also protect vulnerable populations and preserve the nation's cultural and environmental heritage. Planners must consider the long-term impacts of their decisions on the environment, economy, and society. Sustainable development requires balancing the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So you must know this. This has been decades already for this ran for several decades um regarding definition of sustainable development. So this is exactly what this section is all about, that sustainable development is a long-range strategy for planners. So we also, another one is we also pay attention to disadvantaged sectors. We need to ensure that benefits or that the benefits of development reach all segments of society, particularly disadvantaged or marginalized groups. Planners should advocate for equitable access to resources and opportunities in their projects. How about protection of environment and heritage? Well, planners have a responsibility to safeguard natural resources, biodiversity, and cultural heritage sites. This involves making decisions that prevent environmental degradation and preserve the cultural identity of communities. How about public ownership and accountability? Projects should promote transparency and accountability, particularly when public resources or assets are involved. So planners must ensure that public ownership is protected and that the benefits of development are widely shared. As to informed decision making, planners must base their decisions on accurate data and evidence, considering the potential consequences of their actions. Engaging stakeholders and considering their input is also vital to making informed and balanced decisions. We also need to reduce regional disparities. So planners should work towards reducing inequalities between regions by promoting balanced development. This includes ensuring that rural and less developed areas receive attention and resources to improve their economic and social conditions. So, safeguarding the national interest involves making decisions that prioritize the well-being of the country and its people. We go to, so I think that's the last line, Jen. So can you, okay. Uh, yeah, for example, Renee, okay, this is one of those questions I've asked the 2024 batch. For example, Rene, an environmental planner, is approached by a developer who offers him a substantial reward if he approves a project quickly, despite knowing it may not may not meet all environmental regulations. So, what should Rene do according to the Code of Ethics for Environmental Planners? So, yeah, I'll leave all this. I'll give you this slide deck. Okay, I think Jen, can we go to another one so that we can give some mock exams on ethics. So another one is Flor is asked by the local Chamber of Commerce to present her views on economic development versus environmental protection. So she has developed a reputation as an environmental advocate, which has put her at odds with some local businesses. So knowing her job is at risk, Flor decides to shift her presentation to emphasize the economic benefits of environmental protection. Which of the following best characterizes her decision? I think there's another question there. Maria, an environmental planner, is tasked with developing a comprehensive land use plan for a rapidly urbanizing city. So one of the key challenges is balancing economic growth with environmental sustainability. So Maria has identified several priorities for the plan. Which of the following actions would best align with the principles outlined in Section 11, which is safeguarding national interest? So I'll give you this. Can we see another one, or is that the last one? Okay. So, the rules of conduct of the Code of Ethics for Environmental Planners include the following. We shall not accept any form of compensation and blah, blah, blah. So, if you notice, okay, so which of the following choices apply? So, we will discuss that tomorrow, because there should be, uh, yeah, we're supposed to give you a mock exams. Yeah, just 20 items on Code of Ethics. So I'll not answer this first because this will form part of the mock exams. Now, as to the strategy, for example, so which of the following choice apply? If in doubt, and for example, during the board exams, you're somewhat not, or you're unsure of how to answer this, but applying strategy means that letter A, 1, 3, 2, 4, 1. So, which of those items occurred most often? Like number one, letter Roman numeral one. So we shall not accept any form of compensation, commission, rebate, or other advantage that may be perceived as a conflict of interest. So it occurred in ACD. So there must be something in one that you have to look for in other items there that you need to cluster with that expresses commonality. So that's something, a strategy that we can do in answering questions that involves long sentences and when you're in doubt and when you find it vague. So another one is Roman numeral 3, 3, 3, 3. So third 3 times also, even 4, right? So it's something that It's challenging also. So when I think this is the advice that I'll normally make uh to as ENP aspirants. Like for example, when you're not able to get some key elements or keywords from the question, then you proceed to the choices, to the options. Maybe you can find some, of course, one there is the appropriate answer or the best answer. So, kayo na yung mamimili where you find yourself comfortable. And you can even perfect your board exams if you're good at strategies rather than even in substance. Like, for example, because you can already absorb everything. It's too long. And that's why we're doing this. Like 1 year preparation should be good. No reason for you not to top. Okay. I'm not settling for even passing, but top. Because imagine 1 year, di ba? Na preparation. So, you need to look or shift your attention from the question to the answer, to the set, to the options there. Doon kayo makakakita ng correct answer. I mean, ng combination by applying strategies, merely strategies, okay? So, one is also occurring 3 times. So it's something tricky, right? So tomorrow, we'll do that because after your mock exams, then probably I can discuss on the correct and incorrect answers to make sure that we're all understanding how to move forward in our test taking strategies and not just substance. I know you're all good. I know you have something unique in your critical thinking skills, in your analytical skills. So we need to leverage also test taking strategies or techniques. Okay, so that would be all tonight. I hope you Jen, so if you can send this in your to our 2025 aspirants, and then